Hare Krishna. So the point is that we're here in this material world, but Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that we're different from the material body. Body is made of the Bhumir, Apo, Nalo, Vayu, right? Gross material bodies made up of earth, water, fire, air. And we also have the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and false ego. So this body covers our real self, which is the eternal spirit soul. So the process of yoga, bhakti yoga, is to awaken the living entity covered by the gross and material body, to understand his real identity as the eternal spirit soul. The material world is not a place that's conducive to spiritual understanding. Rather, it's a place where material understanding is very difficult, right? And that's the nature of people in this age that we live in. Right? They're not very much interested in spiritual life. If you tell somebody the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, they may get bored very quickly, right? But if you tell them something about the politics between Congress and BJP, or the Australian cricketer that was cheating in the ball, then they become all ears. They're very interested, right? So this is the nature is there to hear about something, right? The whole world is working on the premise of questions and answers. People are asking questions, people are getting answers, right? Even Prabhupada said that the bird wakes up early in the morning and is immediately chirping, "Where's worm? Where's worm? Where's worm?" Right? You go to the marketplace and people are saying, they're calling out, "Come and take my wares, so much per kilo," right? So this is natural. Questions and answers. The whole world works on it. But what as conditioned living entities, not just in this birth, we're not just conditioned in this life, but we're conditioned in many lives. Many, many lives. Because, as I mentioned, besides the gross material bodies, there's the subtle material body. And it's explained in Srimad Bhagavatam that when the living entity leaves the gross material body, that's called death, right? The subtle material body goes with him to the next material body, right? Just like it's described in Srimad Bhagavatam, that the aroma of a rose is carried on the wind, right? When you smell the aroma of the rose, it comes to you on the carrier of air. In the same way, when the living entity leaves the material body, he's carried to the next material body by the subtle material body, which is the mind, intelligence, and the false ego. So this same mind, intelligence, and false ego is traveling with us. And there are so many impressions in the mind, right, that come to us. This is what it means to be conditioned. We have this, long history of being conditioned in the material world. So, Bhakti Yoga, or the science of Krishna consciousness, means to wash off is to purify all these conditionings, so that, and all the different designations that we have heaped on us by so many different sets of circumstances. Like if somebody comes from a particular part of the country, well, they have a certain identity then, right? Like many of the taxi drivers in Bombay are from Bihar, right? And the Marathi people don't like so much the Bihari taxi drivers. Right? So if you say, Hare Bihari, it carries a certain kind of designation with it, right? But if in, I'm sure in Bihar there's somebody else that they have found to pick on. But the point is that we have all these designations. They're forced upon us by our material circumstances. But we're different from we're not Biharis, we're not Rajasthanis, we're not Americans, we're not Russians. These are simply the material designations. They're called upadhis that have, they're forced upon us by these material circumstances. So devotional service means to become free from all these designations, to go beyond them and understand our real identity. Now, what is our real identity? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Chaitanya, he's explained what our real identity is. And that's Jiver Swarupai Niti Krishna Das. We're the eternal servants of Krishna. Right? Srila Sanatana Goswami was one of the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he went to Mahaprabhu and he explained to him that, people call me Pandit. And certainly Srila Sanatana Goswami was definitely a Pandit. He knew Sanskrit, he knew Persian, he knew so many different languages, right? And he was a great scholar. And he was employed in the service of the king of that time. Actually, the king was busy in military exploits and had more or less turned the kingdom over to these two brothers, Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis. And so for that reason, they were more or less outcasted from, although they were from Brahminical families, from Brahmin families, because they were in the employment of the Mohammedans, they were considered outcasts. But when they came in the contact with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they immediately gave up their all designations. And Sanatana Goswami said that although people say I'm a learned, or they call me Pandit, but I don't even know who I am, right? And this is the really beginning of spiritual life, is to understand who we are, the very foundation. When Arjuna was on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he became bewildered, right? He was thinking, although his duty as a Kshatriya was to fight, he was seeing his relatives on the other side, and out of compassion he was thinking not to fight. So he was giving many reasons to Krishna. And he had become very despondent, and his famous Gandiva bow had slipped from his hands, and he was crying. And at that time he told Krishna, I surrender unto you. You please instruct me. So the first thing that Krishna explained to him was that although you are speaking all these learned words, you're fool number one. This is the position of the guru or the teacher, is to chastise the student so the student comes up to a higher level, can understand things as they are. Right? So Krishna explains to Arjuna, first of all, that we're not this body. We're the eternal living entity. Right? And he used many different examples, like the growing body, first child, then young person, middle-aged person. The body's always changing, but the soul remains the same. He gave the example of the change of cloth. When your shirt becomes old and useless, you take it off, you get a new shirt. In the same way we get new material bodies, right? So Krishna, in his conversation with Arjuna, he's instructing us about, first of all, what's the very foundation of spiritual life. And that is that we're not this body. We're the eternal spirit soul, the servant of Krishna. What's the process for understanding this? Well, first and foremost, the knowledge comes to us through Krishna as the original guru. Krishna is the original guru. But then he has many of his representatives. Right? And if we hear from these representatives the message of Krishna, then we can get that realization. Because there's Gyan, there's Vigyan, there's knowledge, and then there's the practical application of knowledge. So we may understand a thing theoretically, but then in its practical way we may not. So in order to get the practical realization that I'm not this body, I'm an eternal spirit soul, we need to have a guru. Right? This is enunciated in all the Vedic literatures, that you require guru. And it's the same in the material sense also. Anything that you want to accomplish in the material world, something that you want to learn, you require a teacher, isn't it? You're studying, I bet you, engineering, right? How many are studying engineering here? Raise your hand. Okay, quite a few. But in order to understand engineering, you have to go to it, you have to have a teacher. And without a teacher, it's very difficult to really grasp that engineering principles, right? Let's put it this way. Would you want to live in a building that an engineer built who never had a teacher and only read the book? Or would you feel more safe in a building from someone who actually learned from an engineer engineering? Practical thing, right? So all types of knowledge, and also spiritual knowledge, requires a proper guidance. And in the absence of that guidance, people tend to speculate. People they make up their own thing about life and what life is meant for. And obviously they come to wrong conclusions. And they come up with a lot of frustrations. That's why we see that people are basically frustrated in life. Right? One of the number one problems in this society and in any society today is that people take shelter of intoxications, right? Like drinking, and worse than that, drugs, right? In the United States, there's an addiction to opiate painkillers, right? It starts out, a person has a bad back, a back pain, and they start out taking these painkillers, and pretty soon they're addicted to the painkillers. And even though the back pain is gone, they're still looking for these painkillers, right? Because they're addicted. So all types of intoxication is a result of the frustrations of not knowing what is the purpose of life, right? And some people think, well, just having a family is the purpose of life. Right? Get an education, so you get a good job, so you can earn money and support your family. Right? Purpose of life. You have children, right? Bungalow, and BB, Bacha. The 3 B's, right? But if just having a family is the purpose of life, I mean, animals also have families, right? Even a tiger takes care of its little cub, isn't it? And if having a family is the purpose of life, then pigs are a lot better at it than we are. When a human being has a child, maybe one, sometimes twins, piglets are 6 or 7, right, at a time. So there must, if pigs are also having families, but what is it that human beings have about them that make them special? And we understand this from Shastras, that they can atato brahma jignasha tattva. They can inquire about what's the absolute truth. What is the absolute truth? And that boils down to Atma Tattva. Atma Tattva. Understanding the truth of the self. Atma, meaning the self. And Tattva, meaning the truth. What is the truth of the self? The whole purpose of Lord Krishna speaking the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna is to come to this point. Atma Tattva. The truth of the self. Understanding who I am and what I'm supposed to do. Right? Without this, naturally there's going to be confusion in society. And we can see that in society is in a very confused state. Right? People are not becoming handy. Previously in India, people were very satisfied in life. Right? The majority of people in India lived in farms, and they performed agriculture. Now people are getting away from that. They're rushing to the cities, right? Because they think that, in the farm people are not earning money, but in the city they'll earn money. So they come to the city to find their fortunes. So things in the material world are always changing. There's always a flux, right? But in the end, if people don't understand Atma Tattva, if they don't have this realization about who they are, what's their real identity, then they can't be satisfied. They can't be happy, right? Srila Prabhupada gives the example of fish out of water. What you give to the fish, but if he's out of water, he's not satisfied. In the same way, unless we have this understanding about who we are as eternal spirit souls, then we won't be happy. So Srila Prabhupada started the Krishna Consciousness movement for this purpose, to help people understand their real identity as eternal spirit souls. And that's done chiefly in this age by the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, specifically, Hare Krishna, Hare
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Srila Prabhupada was living in Vrindavan, and he left Vrindavan to go to America to give people this knowledge, right? First, he made the effort. He tried to spread this movement in India, but he went to some members of society, some upstanding members of society, and asked them that you please give me your son and I'll train them to become Brahmins, right? Because it's required. Training is required. It's not just a matter that I'm born in a Brahmin family, so I'm a Brahmin, and I have a 2-paisa thread. That doesn't mean Brahmin. It requires training, right? So Srila Prabhupada approached these persons and said, you give me your son and I'll train them to be Brahmins. And their reply was, Are Swamiji, kya fayda hai Brahmin banane ka? Hamara bacha engineer banana chahiye. So then Srila Prabhupada thought, okay, what to do? Maybe I better go to America to make some Brahmins. Right? Brahmin means teacher. Right? Who's understood what is Brahman and teaches that. This is what it means to be a Brahmin. Right? Why are they the head of society? Because they teach others how to live in this world, and how to be peaceful, and how to be progressive spiritually and materially. Right? Big university, they're only teaching people material knowledge, which is always changing. But how to be peaceful, they can't. You know, if you go to someone who smokes cigarettes, how will they teach you don't smoke? Right? Acharya means one who teaches by example. Right? Teaches by example. So this is what's required in society today. We need, some first-class persons. Right? What does it mean, first class? It means one who understands Atma Tattva and who can impart that knowledge of Atma Tattva to others. This is what's really required in society. Right? So Srila Prabhupada went to America and he started this Krishna Consciousness movement after a great struggle. Right? When he got off the boat, Srila Prabhupada said he didn't know whether to go right or left. He didn't have any friends there. He didn't have any acquaintances. But he had strong faith in the message of Krishna. The message of Krishna is so powerful that anyone would become attracted to it. Anyone would become attracted to it. In Bhagavatam it's mentioned. Right? The message is so powerful that it's the medicine for the disease of the material world, the material disease, the Baba Rog. Right? It's a Aushoda, it's a medicine for the disease of material life. Right? And who wouldn't be attracted by it? Right? The messages are so beautiful. The Lord is described in the various Shastras like Srimad Bhagavatam in so many different attractive ways. Beautiful shlokas. So who wouldn't be attracted? Well, there are those who wouldn't be attracted, and Shastra describes those who are killers of animals and those who are killers of the self. So the Krishna Consciousness movement is there to help people become attracted by the message of Krishna and come to the platform of knowledge of their real self, and not only that, but help other people understand that knowledge. This is required in society. We have so many engineers, right? And there are so many doctors. But still, no one is becoming an engineer like Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma created the whole universe, right? That's engineer. If you look at how complicated this material body is, and how it works, how it repairs itself, right? You may have an engineer that has made the best supercomputer, right? But if you take two supercomputers and put them together, you're not going to get a third supercomputer. But the Supreme Lord is such an engineer. This body is like a machine. It works like a machine. When you put a male and a female together, you get a third machine. Right? That's engineer. So we're never going to duplicate that kind of engineering. That's reserved for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rather, we should try to understand what our eternal identity is in spirit soul. Then we'll become happy. We'll be able to help other people become happy. The goal is to become happy. People are just confused about what will make them happy. They get all worked up about something like, they're going to go out and have intoxication. They think that by drinking beer and drinking liquor, they're going to become happy. Right? But in the end, after all night drinking, are they happy? They headache. You got a hangover. Right? Where's the happiness? They destroyed their health. They destroyed their character. They do all kinds of stupid things when they're intoxicated. Right? And they lose their money. Nothing happy about that, is it? Right? But in the material world, if you don't understand Atma Tattva, you're bound to follow that path. Bound. Because that's the nature of Kali Yuga. Right? So in order to become saved from degradation, one has to follow the path of Atma Tattva. Jigyasha, inquiry about the nature of the Absolute Truth. And that's what this Krishna Consciousness movement is meant to do. So, now I've told you what I wanted to tell you, and I hope it hit a chord somewhere. But I would like you to tell me what you would like to hear from me. If you have any questions, or you have any comments, let's open the discussion up to the floor, and you can participate. We'd like to hear from you. Any question or any comment?
This material world is very conducive for material knowledge.
Yes?
This material world comes into the spiritual world only, one fourth part of the spiritual world.
Mm-hmm.
It should be more conducive because the state of the spiritual nature is more powerful than the material nature. So it should be.
The material world is the energy of Krishna. Krishna has various energies. Right? He has the internal potency, he has the external potency, he has the marginal potency. We're marginal potency. Sometimes we're attracted by the internal potency, sometimes we're attracted by the external potency. But this material energy is still the energy of Krishna. So it's conducive for either. The material energy can bewilder a living entity, or that same material energy can be used to enlighten the living entity. Prabhupada gives the example. If you drink too much milk, you can get loose motions. But the cure for loose motions is dahi. What is dahi? It's nothing but transformed milk. So the same thing, medically used, right, as a therapy, cures the disease. Right? So this material world, although it is bewildering to the conditioned soul, the same material world can be a source of enlightenment for him. Like the expert, Prabhupada says, the expert electrician. He uses electricity, it's energy. He uses it to heat or he uses it to make something cold. The same energy but the expert electrician can properly manipulate it so they could do either of the two things. In the same way, the devotees of the Lord, they are understanding the energies of the Lord and how to use the energy of the Lord so that it doesn't entangle them, but rather it brings them enlightenment, and to the point where they understand their identity as eternal spirit souls. Okay. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Regarding Atma Tattva, it is quite bewildering between the arguments of impersonalists and personalism. Both impersonal Brahman and Bhagavan, both are true. Please explain how to deal with people who are Shankaracharya people, who quote so many shlokas and play with Sanskrit and prove impersonalism. I face so many people like this in South India during book distribution. How can I improve myself to use the barriers and distribute Prabhupada's books? Please help me, your servant. Well, it's actually a fact. There are three different aspects of the Supreme Lord. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti, Sabhyate. That the Lord has his impersonal feature, the Lord has his localized feature as Paramatma, and the Lord has his feature as Bhagavan. So certainly those who emphasize the impersonal feature of the Lord, they don't know Bhagavad Gita very well. That's the problem. If you understand what Krishna says, then you know that the Brahman is subservient to Bhagavan and not the other way around. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Brahmano hi pratistaham. I am the source of Brahman and not the other way around. Right? But because they try to confuse people, they do it actually a poor fund of knowledge. People become confused. But as far as on book distribution, if you meet, there's so many people you can meet. In India, there's one thing for sure, there's no dearth of people. There's enough people here, right? Right? You have any problem, not finding enough people in India? Huh? No problem. I can remember I was on traveling Sankirtan, and we were in the city all day, so many people. So we would take our bus after doing Sankirtan in the cities, and we'd go out in the country, park our bus near the river for taking bath, right? And we were way out in the country. And, I thought, oh, finally, no people. We found a place where there's no people. But India is such a place that wherever you go, even if you think it's far out of the place, some people will turn up. And sure enough, they did. But we are looking for people that are ready for this knowledge. Right? People that are ready to take it. What kind of people are that? What are the four kinds of people that take to devotional service? Who can tell me? Pavan Putra, what's the four kinds of people that take to devotional service? One who's what? Yeah, distressed, yeah. Okay. Inquisitive. Right, right. So these are the four kinds of people that we're looking for. Now, so there's two kinds, right? Although, like if you go, now is the mango season, Right? So there's so many alms on the tree. But some alms are kacha. And some alms are paka. Right? So we're not looking for kacha alms. Right? We're looking for paka alms. Right? Why should you waste your time trying to get a kacha alm? You can't even cut it. It's so hard. And if you try to, if you get a paka alm, you just give it a little tug and it comes off. But the kacha alm, you have to pull and you can break the whole limb off the tree trying to get one of the kacha alms. Right? So Lord Chaitanya, he would go to some villages when he was traveling, and he would chant, and all the people would chant, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. But if he went to a village where they weren't interested, what would he do? Just go to another village. Right? So it's the same thing for us. If somebody's fixed in Mayavadi philosophy, why waste your time? Unka buddhi kharab ho gaya. There's nothing inside but gobar. So why you waste your time? You go to the next person. Whether you're South India, North India, it doesn't matter. Right? There's so many people out there that are ready to waste your time because they're professional time wasters. I call them PTWs, professional time wasters. So don't be confused. You can tell if somebody's ready, right? Go to the next person. Is that okay? Whoever wrote that, is that all right? Anybody else have a question?
There's another question.
Oh, there's another question on the back. It is said, Dibya Gyan, Padya Prakatisto. I get a doubt, then why Brahma Sutras? Vedas are provided. Can't they provide Prem Bhakti to humanity? Sure they can. The Vedas can provide Prema Bhakti to humanity provided you understand the Vedas. Right? The Vedas are very vast literatures. You need a guide to, it also talks about worship of the demigods in the Vedas, performing sacrifices for material purposes in the Vedas. How are you going to navigate through the Vedas so that you get to the point of bhakti? Right? Why did Krishna tell Arjuna, right? Rise above the Vedas, right? Because there's many material prescriptions in there for gradual elevation. It's like if you have a guide, then they can show you the really important points of the topic. Now, once you understand the goal, Atma Tattva, developing love for Krishna, Prema Bhakti, then everything is already lined up by the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, namely the 6 Goswamis, especially Srila Rupa Goswami, and especially his book, The Nectar of Devotion. One of the most important books that you have in the process of bhakti is the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Srila Rupa Goswami very scrutinizingly went through all the Vedic literatures and took out those things and presented them in such a way that one can step by step go to the platform of love of Godhead, which is the ultimate goal of life. Prema Pamartha Mahan. So the Vedic literatures are there for, there's many people on many different levels. But if we take proper guidance from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers, then we can, instead of taking the slow route, we can take the fast route. Right? There's two roads to Pune. One is the old highway and one is the express highway. Right? You may go by the old highway and get there, but it'll take a long time. But if you take the express highway to Pune, you can go much faster. So what is the express highway? The express highway is that all of the, the pitfalls, the obstacles, they've been removed. They're out of the way. Right? You can go straight, and you can go fast. Right? That's Srila Rupa Goswami and the 6 Goswamis. They've already made the highway for us. They've opened up the super expressway. Right? And if you got, I don't know, I think it's 150 rupees, you pay, you get your ticket, you can go. Right? So there's also a price to pay to take the express route through the Vedic literatures. And Srila Rupa Goswami talks about that also in the Nectar Devotion. It's the eagerness to have it. It's the eagerness to attain the ultimate goal, lolium. That's the price you have to pay. Any other questions? Oh. When I hear lecture, my intention is generally to defeat someone rather than listening for my good. What is the problem in me? There's no problem. If it's a sign of intelligence to have doubts. If you doubt something, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. It's a sign of intelligence, it says in Srimad Bhagavatam. But you should get your doubts answered. And once your doubts answered, you shouldn't go on doubting. Right? For the doubting soul, there's neither happiness in this life or the next life. But initially, to have some doubt, it's not a bad thing. Now, if you want to defeat somebody all the time, then you better join a debating team. And you can, debate continuously. However, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna recommends that we take on a submissive attitude, right? If we're always challenging, then it'll be difficult to really catch up the message of Krishna. If you come to somebody with a full cup, they can't put anything in your cup. The cup should be empty. Then they can put something in it. In the same way, if we're in a challenging mood all the time, then that means we know, right? And if we already know, then how will we get the knowledge if we think we already know everything? So it's good to be in a submissive mood. Asking questions is very important. Someone who has a question, they can learn. And the more you ask, the more you're inquisitive, the more you can learn. So, questions?
Shri Prabhupada has mentioned that you should know the art of book distribution without irritating the other person.
Yeah.
So can you explain this, like how generally we have to force, because when we ask them books, then they say we have it. Like, we have my books. Generally say when this statement is
Right.
you have to explain it in detail in the sense that they meant that book may not be having this. You have it. So somewhat somebody gets irritated also. So how do you understand?
Well, it takes some expertise to convince someone to take a book and to not irritate them. But specifically, you're showing somebody the Bhagavad Gita, they say we have it. You say, oh, really? Well, give them the Krishna book, right? Give them another book, right? And it just kind of depends upon the relationship. We want to establish a relationship. If you have a relationship, the person can do anything for you, right? Just look like at it. If somebody comes and takes money out of a man's pocket, he's going to fight, right? But if his wife comes and takes money out of his pocket, he says, "Oh, just see, my wife is taking my money. How nice." Right? Because there's a relationship, right? So the art of book distribution is to very quickly develop a relationship with persons, right? And they're happy to give a donation. And if their mindset is that they don't want to give, what do you do? Right? It's already said. So that means they're kacha, and it's time to go to the paka. Look for the paka. Don't get stuck with the kacha. Yes. Right back there.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I wanted to ask that when we try to speak with our friends about Krishna who are atheists, and they sometimes call names like he was just an illusionary figure or he was just a politician. So it is one of the nam-aparad to tell somebody who is not accepting it. So what is the limit till what we must listen to them, or till what we must preach to them? And what is the limit that we must say, okay, go ahead with your thought?
Well, everyone can be engaged according to what platform they're on, right? And for some people, the best you can do for them is give them some prasadam. You're engaging them in an act of devotion. By eating prasadam, no matter what they're thinking, oh, this is good, or this, that, it's an act of devotion. Because they're serving Krishna by eating that prasadam. So some people are just on that platform. So you just keep feeding them prasadam. And one day they'll come to the next platform. They actually be inquisitive about what is the purpose of this life and how to actually become happy inside, so that no matter what's going on outside, you're happy because you're happy inside. You just have to judge by what platform they're on. We can always engage them. How come only the white wallahs are asking questions here? What about the pant shirt guys? You got any questions? You already know everything? Oh, there's one back there. Yeah. Yes, sir. You don't have a cordless? Battery's gone. Yes.
Prabhuji, I want to ask, if Brahmanas are wearing the heads, also they're keeping the shaved heads, but this part of the area they not shave these things. Why?
They're keeping Sika, you say?
Ashika and also they're wearing the threads.
They're wearing thread, they're keeping Sika. And they're smoking bidi. तो फायदा क्या? क्या मतलब? That's your question. Okay, the purpose of wearing neck beads, right? And wearing thread. Well, the thread is given to the devotee at the time of Brahminical initiation, so that they can chant the Gayatri mantra on that thread, right? And it's a mantra given by the spiritual master for further progress in spiritual life, right? It's not a symbol that I'm better than you. That's not the purpose. It has a functionality. The thread is awarded to a person by the spiritual master to chant mantras that will help him progress spiritually. Right? Now, the mala, right, usually made out of tulsi, is worn so that the devotee of the Lord, it's kind of like It's like a policeman wears a badge, right? Or has a uniform, so that people can recognize if I'm in trouble, I can go to this person and I can get help, right? So in the same way, the devotees, they have Kantimala, so that people know that if I want to know Atma Tattva, then I can go to this person and ask a question about Atma Tattva. Right? Same way with the Sika. Right? It's kind of like a uniform for people to recognize that here's a devotee of the Lord, and I should, I can find out, I might not be able to find out the cricket scores from him, but I could find out about Bhagavad Gita from him. Is that okay? But for the persons who wear these, the dress, but they don't follow, then it degrades the purpose, right? Be wearing kantimala and smoking bidi, it doesn't mean anything, right? But it actually has its meaning when the person's following. Yes?
Prabhuji, I was trying to find out that I could not get success. What happened to Radha, Gopis, Balramji after Krishna left this material place? So, where I can find it out more about it? Or maybe you can just describe what happened to Radha and Gopis after Krishna.
Well, it's just explained in Bhagavatam that, Krishna wanted, when he finished up his pastimes and, manifest pastimes in this world, he took all of his people with him back to the spiritual world. They went back to the spiritual world. Balaram went back, and that's a method, right? If one becomes serious about devotional service, Krishna, on a regular basis, he comes to this world and he manifests his pastimes, either in this universe or some other universe. And for the persons that are progressing in spiritual life, they may partake in those pastimes in this world or in some other world, right? And then, just like we saw 5,000 years ago when Krishna went back to the spiritual world, all of his associates, the gopis and the Brijvasis, they all went back. So if you practice devotional service, you may take birth from the womb of a gopi, wherever Krishna is having his pastimes in this material world, and at the end of those pastimes, you can go back with Krishna back to the spiritual world. So Krishna actually never leaves the spiritual world. He never leaves Vrindavan. But he sometimes manifests Vrindavan just for the benefit of all the conditioned souls here in this material world. So if you're qualified, you can still go to Vrindavan and see the gopis. Radharani's there, the gopis are there, they're all there, they never left. They're still even there. But we have to become qualified to be able to see them. And if you chant, if you follow the process, gradually you can appreciate Vrindavan and all of its residents. Yes? Who's next? Yes? Okay. So many lectures. How many lectures do you listen to? Yeah. Yeah.
Even though we know that we should follow them and we should keep it in regular practice, still we are not able to do so. Like for example, I listened in a lecture that while chanting we should not talk to anyone, even though it is a very important task for us. Still we are not able to restrict ourselves and many such other things. So how do we bring it in life that we implement what we have heard?
Well, it's a gradual process. And yes, there are many instructions, and we may not be able to follow all of them, right? But we follow what we can, right? And whatever we do follow, we try to follow on a regular basis. Just like there's an instruction, chant 16 rounds. But we may not have time, or we may not feel we can do that. But we can fix up 1 round, or 2 rounds, or 3 or 4, whatever we're comfortable with. And if we do that on a regular basis, that becomes a sadhana. It becomes a practice in devotional service. And gradually, we become purified in that way. Not that we're following everything, but we're following something fixed up for us so that we can progress. So we don't need to get too worried about what we're not following, right? We should be more concerned about what we are following and trying to do that nicely, right? That way we'll progress in spiritual life. Is that okay?
There are many bogus preachers or
Many bogus preachers? Are you a bogus preacher?
means who are not bona fide authority,
Yeah.
but they also chant holy name. So why don't they get purified?
Well, because they're chanting with offense. They're chanting, they may be chanting, but they don't even have faith that Krishna is a person. Right? If I chant your name and I'm angry at you, you'll understand that I'm angry at you just when I say your name. What's your name? Umit. Sumit. Right. So, like when you're at home, your mother calls your name, Sumit, right? She don't say anything else. She only says your name. But you know what she wants just by the way she's saying your name. You know whether she wants you to come here, whether she wants you to do your studies or clean your room or this, just by saying Sumit, isn't it? So in the same way, Krishna knows everything about us just by the way we chant his name. And if we don't have faith in him that he even exists, then he knows that by the way we chant his name. So yes, people are, there's many Mayavadis that are also chanting. They're chanting the holy names of the Lord. But the Lord knows where they're at. The Lord knows what their intentions are. So we want to try to chant the name of the Lord purely so that we can attract the Lord. That's why every day we mention the 10 offenses, so that we avoid the offenses. And we chant the holy name of the Lord without offense, so that the Lord will be attracted by our chanting. Is that okay? Thank you. Anyone else have a question? Oh, I like the when they raise their hands and ask a question. Your desires, ambitions drive us in the material world. If you let go of that, then what would motivate you? Can spiritual practice only be done when you let off the material world completely? How to maintain that balance? Well, first of all, it says very clearly mentions in Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Sarva kama, akama, sarva kama, moksha kamudardi, tivrena bhakti yogena. That you may be sarva kama, filled with material desires, filled with desires. You may be akama, you don't have any desires. Right? Or you may be moksha kama, that you're desiring liberation. Right? But whatever your situation is, by all means, you should engage in devotional service. Because by engaging in devotional service, you'll experience a perfection of whatever your desires are. So, motivation is there in devotional service, just like people who have material desires. They are motivated by sense gratification, and they work very hard for that. But in the same way, persons practicing devotional service, they're motivated by pleasing Krishna. Right? Material means I want to please my senses, me. Spiritual devotional service means to satisfy the senses of Krishna. So persons think that if I don't have my own ambitions as a motivation, I won't be motivated. But actually, if one tries to please Krishna and understands that Krishna is the source of everything, and he has some relationship with Krishna, then he can work even harder than the materialists. The 6 Goswamis in Vrindavan, they were 22 hours in a day, they were serving Krishna, hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna. And in 2 hours they did everything else. Right? 6 Goswamis in Vrindavan. Because they had that attachment to Krishna. They were satisfying Krishna. And from that, they get more energy than the materialist. And the other part of this question is, you spoke about having identities. With these also come certain responsibilities. For instance, keeping your parents in comfort. Sometimes in the material world, you strive to achieve a level of comfort. For that you need to make and work, or you need to make choices and work, which leads to anxiety. So how to navigate the material world? Is it necessary to renunciate? Is it necessary to renunciate? It depends upon what do you mean by renunciation, right? Renunciation can start with a very small step, you know? You may renunciate eating food that's not offered to Krishna. That's a form of renunciation. But anybody can do that. It's not a big deal, right? You just make a determination, I'm not going to eat anything unless it's offered to Krishna, right? And you offer your food. It's a form of renunciation, right? And if you ask me, yeah, that's an important thing, to eat food that's offered to Krishna. Don't eat food that's not offered to Krishna, because food that's not offered to Krishna, Krishna clearly says in the Bhagavad Gita, you're eating only sin. Right? You may purchase it, but it still doesn't belong to you. It still belongs to Krishna. It's Krishna's energy. So when you buy that mango, even though you purchased it, it's still Krishna's mango. Right? So Krishna doesn't need your mango. He's not hungry for your mango. Right? But if you, out of a gesture of recognizing your dependence on the Supreme Lord and that everything belongs to Him, you offer it to Krishna for His pleasure. That act of offering that mango to Krishna, you become recognized by Krishna as Krishna's devotees, plus the mango becomes prasadam. That's renunciation. Right? It may not be that you have to shave your head, put on a dhoti, and join the brahmachari ashram. That's also renunciation. But in one sense, it's external. The real renunciation is your mentality of surrendering to Krishna. And you can do that in any situation. The thing about being in the ashram, being in the temple, is that it's a lot easier because you got association. Association makes everything simpler, right? But not imperative. Any other questions out there? Okay. Hands up. Any hands? Why Radharani had not married with Krishna? Well, then if Radharani married Krishna, how could Krishna be her boyfriend? Couldn't be her boyfriend, right? When you're married, that's something else, right? So the relationship between Radha and Krishna is one of the highest relationships of devotion, right? And this we understand from the Acharyas, from the 6 Goswamis, associates of Lord Chaitanya, that there's varieties in the spiritual world. Variety of relationships. Somebody is Krishna's mother. Somebody is Krishna's father. Somebody is Krishna's friend, right? There's all different relationships. And the gopis are Krishna's lover. And amongst the gopis, Krishna is the highest display of love for Krishna. So in the material world, everything is there as a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. Just like if you go to the side of a lake, you see a tree, it's reflected in the lake as though its branches are growing down and its roots are growing up. So the material world is like that. Whatever's here is a reflection of the spiritual world. And in the spiritual world, that mellow or rasa of boyfriend and girlfriend is there as the highest expression of love for Krishna. It can't be understood unless you understand your real identity as Atma Tattva. That begins so that you can understand that relationship between Radha and Krishna. If you don't, then it becomes the most degraded relationship here in the material world, boyfriend and girlfriend. Now the attraction between man and woman is always there, and for society to run smoothly, therefore we have this marriage. You know, boy and girl, they get married, raise a family. Right? So all the mellows are there. Whatever we see in the material world, it's actually a perverted reflection of what's going on in the spiritual world. But in order to understand the mellows in the spiritual world, how they're different from what we experience here in the material world, you know, iron and gold are both metals, but there's a gulf of difference between gold and iron. In the same way, in this material world, there's all these mellows, but they have so many difficulties along with them. And their pure form is there in the spiritual world with Krishna. So in order to get to one of those mellows, one of those relationships with Krishna, there's a process, and that process is called Bhakti Yoga. In Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada refers soul as he. Can you please explain us how a gender of specific kind is given to the soul? Why not soul as she, or Brahman as it? Well, I think that's just a form of expression. Way back before it was politically correct or incorrect politically, people used to refer to he in a general sense also. It could refer to, women or men. But in actuality, all the living entities are she, really, right? Because the living entity is Prakriti, which is controlled. And the only Purush is right? Everyone else is Prakriti in front of him. So, but in order for, as if we have to come to some point of expression, humanity, humankind, right? So it may be referred to as he. Right? There's always a refined understanding. And we're all Prakriti in front of Krishna. Right? We're all controlled by Krishna. We are part and parcel of Krishna. If Krishna is Purush, then definitely we also will be having the quality in minute quantity. It is logical. At the same time, Lord Chaitanya's Jiva Swarupaya Krishna Nityadas, this is seeming a contradiction, or whether Jivas are master or servant. Jivas are definitely the servant. Due to illusion, they're trying to be the master here in the material world. There's only one master. Everyone else is servant. The master is Krishna. Now, if you don't like that, that's the way life is. You can try to become the master. You can live here in the material world for millions and billions of years trying to be the master, but ultimately you'll get frustrated because it's not your nature. It's not like the masters, the master and the servant, they enjoy equally, right? If the servant of the king also enjoys in the palace of the king, right? He's taken care of by the king as the servant of the king, right? Their enjoyment in one sense is equal, but their roles are different. One is a servant and one is a master. That's the problem. The living entity, due to envy, thinks that why Krishna's only enjoying, I'll also enjoy. And as soon as he has that mentality, he comes to the material world where he can try to be the master, right? Everyone here in the material world is working hard to become the master, right? No one wants to serve. Everyone wants to be served in the material world, not knowing that unless you have the mentality of service, you won't be happy, because that's our nature. We're servants. We're the servants of Krishna. And everyone has to serve anyway. Look around you. Everyone is rendering service. Somebody's serving the country, right? Somebody's a teacher's serving the students are trying to serve the teacher, the parents are serving the children, right? The children are trying to serve the parents. If somebody doesn't have anyone or anybody to serve, what do? They get a dog. They serve their dog. Right? In America, if you have a dog and you take the dog out, right, and the dog passes stool, you have to pick it up. Otherwise you get a $150 fine, right? So you see all these people, they're walking with their dog. They have a little plastic bag. They put it over their hand. They pick up the stool. And then they throw it away. And that's service, right? Serving their dog. Right? Because that's our nature. We have to serve. We have to serve. But Srila Prabhupada has came to the West to teach people how they can serve God. How to serve God. People know in America how to serve their dog, but they don't know how to serve God. So Srila Prabhupada came to teach them how to serve God. Right? And in India, people are forgetting how to serve God. Right? They're also getting dogs. You go to Juhu Beach and there's so many dogs they're walking in Juhu Beach. Right? And they think we're very advanced. I have imported dog. Imported dog. Right? So Srila Prabhupada so kindly is teaching all of us how we can serve Krishna, how we can serve God. Right? And that's the only way we'll be happy. We're not going to be happy Get your degree, keep it on the wall, build a building, make some software, or after you've done it all, at the end of the day, you're not going to be happy if you haven't learned how to serve God. You're not going to be happy. So many people have tried to become happy in this material world. Guess what? It doesn't work. Only way you can become happy is if you learn. It's a process. It's a training how to serve God. Believe me, I know. Other questions? I want to hear, not from you white guys in white. You know everything already. Yeah.
What is the internal, external, and marginal potency?
Yeah, the internal potency is the spiritual world. All of the Vaikuntha planets, Krishna Loka, all the energy that's there in the spiritual world is the internal potency. Devotional service is also part of the internal potency of the Lord. The external potency is this material world, right? Made up of the various different elements that's explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. And then the Tatastha Shakti is the marginal, it's the living entities. Sometimes they're attracted by the internal potency, sometimes they're attracted by the external potency. So that's the three potencies of the Supreme Lord. We're Tatastha. We're in between, right? We can sometimes go this way or sometimes go that way. Devotional service means to train us how to be attracted by the internal potency, how to be immersed in the internal potency of the Supreme Lord. You have a question? No questions? You know everything? Huh? You don't know everything. So you must have a question. What is it?
Maybe like to know insights on soul and super soul, and how it's affect, how it's correlation with the desires.
This is a question that great sages and yogis have been asking for thousands of years to know about the super soul, right? And to experience the super soul. They sit in meditation for, years and years and years to come in contact with the super soul, right? But you can easily come in contact with the super soul. Very, very easily. First, you chant Hare Krishna, and then you go out and try and distribute books. When you go out and distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, very quickly you'll come in touch with the super soul. You'll be able to recognize the super soul in the heart of other living entities. Because on our own effort, we can't do anything. But we don't have that realization. That realization, though, comes very easily when you try to benefit other people. You understand yourself, you understand the other person, and you understand the owner and controller of both of you as a super soul. So realizing the super soul can be available for a very new devotee if they take to the process of doing Sankirtan very quickly. And otherwise, through meditation and other processes, it may take thousands of years. Thousands of years. The Lord is in everyone's heart. The Lord is in my heart. And everyone. We're all part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. He's so kind that He comes with us. Even though we ignore Him in the worst way. If you were living with someone, right, in an apartment, but you never spoke to that person, you never paid them any attention, right? In fact, you may say some obnoxious things about them, right? What do you think that person would, after some time, would say, forget this guy, I'm getting out of here. But the Lord never does that. Although you're both living in the same place, the body, Paramatma's there, Atma's there. Still, very kindly, very patiently, he's waiting until you notice him. And at the same time, even though you don't notice him, he gives you so many good instructions. Have you ever had the experience? You do something, but there's a voice that's saying, hey, that's not a good thing to do. You ever had that experience? You know, like they say, let your conscience be your guide. Well, who is the conscience? What conscience are they talking about that should be your guide? It's the Paramatma. He's there. He's trying to guide us. He's trying to help us. Even though we don't have any interest in him at all, still he's trying to help us. So devotional service is the process whereby which we recognize the Paramatma in our hearts and the hearts of all living entities, and we become in tune with the Paramatma. We try to develop the same desires that the Paramatma has. That's real oneness, is to be one in desire. So all these things are available in devotional service, understanding our position, the Paramatma's position, in a very practical way, is available through devotional service. Good question. I knew you had a question. Yes.
Can you elaborate more on the subtle bodies and the soul and the relationship with one another? And when we think and we talk to ourselves, who are we actually talking to inside?
Well, it's a good question, you know. Maybe a psychiatrist you ought to see, you know. Who are we talking to? One guy said that, you know, it's pretty bad when you talk to yourself, but when you start answering yourself, then you know you've gone off the pretty bad. But yeah, the mind is a very powerful. It's like a machine, actually, and it needs its space. If you can't try to confine the mind into something, right? You won't be able to do that. When Krishna tells Arjuna in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita how to do meditation, basically control the mind. At the end of that chapter, 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, what does Arjuna say? Huh? He says, my dear Krishna, this trying to control the mind seems as difficult to me as if trying to control the wind. You know, if there's a big tufan coming, or hurricane, the wind's 150 miles an hour, what are you going to do to control it? Right? It's not within your power. You can't control it. No more are you able to control your mind. And it's not your mind anyway. It's Krishna's energy. It's one of Krishna's energy. And it's like a hurricane. It's like a wild horse. Right? What would you do if you came up against a wild horse? How would you control it? Right? But you can control by, what did Krishna say? Constant practice and detachment. If you do those activities that don't agitate the mind, and if you practice controlling the mind by chanting the holy name of the Lord, gradually the mind becomes under control. It's a gradual process. It doesn't happen immediately. But all meditational yogis, you know, that's the purpose, is to control the mind, is to fix the mind on the Supreme. In the ultimate sense, if the mind is going to be controlled, it's when we have the mercy of Krishna that we can control the mind. There was one Subari Muni. He meditated underwater for thousands of years, trying to become free from material life. He saw two fish having sex. His mind became bewildered, right? And even though he was performing such austerities, he fell down, he got married, right? Subari Muni, the story. In family life and so many entanglements, right? So the mind is very, very powerful. It's Krishna's energy. Can you control Krishna? Then how do you think you're going to control Krishna's energy? But Krishna's energy becomes controlled by the mercy of Krishna when we practice Bhakti Yoga.
What is intellect? Why is mind and intellect looked at as two different things?
Well, I'll tell you. This is very interesting. The mind works in a very specific way. Intelligence works in a different way. The mind works according to sankalpa, vikalpa, accepting and rejecting. It just does those two things: accept, reject, accept, reject. So, in material life, acceptance and rejection that the mind does is based on sense gratification. Because the mind, thinks it's the big enjoyer, right? So it sees something, good-looking girl. Oh yeah, that's good. And then some, 300-pound guy comes right next and stands next to her, and then the mind says, she ain't so good. Acceptance and rejection. Sankalpa, vikalpa. Right? Now what does the intelligence do? The intelligence, after the mind's accepted and rejected, the intelligence kicks in and tries to, maybe if I say something to the girl, she'll like me. That's the intelligence, right? Or you see an apple. I like the apple. Mind's done its business. I like the apple, right? So then the intelligence kicks in. Do I got any money? No, I don't got any money. Well, maybe I could steal it. Intelligence working. You see the difference?
Intelligence works for the mind.
Yeah, once the mind's accepted something, the intelligence comes in to, finish off the deal.
But in this case, doesn't it become like a chicken and egg, because the intelligence needs to convince the mind?
Well, they're very close to each other. They work in tandem. But mind has a specific role, intelligence has another role. But over and above the mind and the intelligence is the soul. Higher than the mind, higher than the intelligence is the soul. But the soul is playing a really back seat to the whole thing. Because of being in a weak, for so long being controlled by the mind and controlled by the intelligence, he's just kind of ethereally there, so to speak. When the living entity becomes more practiced to perform the activities that are in the nature of the soul, he becomes, instead of controlled by the mind, he becomes the controller of the mind. Instead of, there's one psychiatrist says, I think, therefore I am. He equates his very existence with the existence of his mind. But in spiritual realization, the conclusion is that the mind is there, but I'm separate from it. Yes?
How do we get detached in this material world? In material world, we are bound to get attached. Attachment will be in terms of family, in terms of friends, and many other things.
Well, the attachment that we have in this material world is quite natural because of our conditioning. But if we want to change our attachments, we have to change our conditioning. And in order to change our conditioning, there's a process where we become, instead of attached to the things that we're kind of associating with in this material world, that we become attached to Krishna. Attachment has got to be there. Desires have to be there. We're living entities. We have desires, right? We have to express them. But we're expressing them with things and persons that are not going to reciprocate with us the way we want them to. Like you see this boyfriend and girlfriend, you read in the paper, well, one day he shot her, or she shot him. How is that? Because they didn't fulfill each other's expectations. And only Krishna can fulfill our expectations. We want a whole ocean of enjoyment, but we're only getting a drop in this material world. Only a drop. It's like you're in the desert. You're thirsty. You're dying of thirst. And somebody says, hey, don't worry, I'll give you a drop of water. You say, a drop? I want a Bisleri bottle at least. Right? So in the material world, it's just like that. We're looking for a whole ocean. Anandam buddhivardhanam. But we're just getting these little drops of sense gratification. It's not satisfying. And we keep looking and we keep looking and we get more frustrated and we get more frustrated. And due to that frustration, we start drinking. And when we start drinking, or whatever kind of intoxication they take shelter of, they become more frustrated and more frustrated. And they become depressed. Right? In America, the land of sense gratification, 4 out of 5 people are taking antidepressants. Right? Why are they depressed? Because sense gratification is a very depressing thing. It's not happiness. But people don't know that. And the whole of India is following America. Cars, and clothes, and, money. You look at all these guys and the engineers that have, quote unquote, made it. They're not happy. They're frustrated like anything. I knew one person, his son was a successful engineer, working for an oil company, an American oil company, very successful, right? Big salary. Bought an apartment over in Andheri worth 2 crores of rupees. Right? Had another apartment here in Juhu. One day he was walking through the Hyderabad airport, 55 years old, had a heart attack, died on the spot. Right? So we had, because he was known, his father was known to the temple, we had a ceremony for the son, although the son never came to the temple. And his friends came. And who were his friends? Some American guys that worked with him in the company, right? And what was their activities? Every night after work, they used to go out and drink till midnight, right? So if having a position, having money, successful engineer, if it's so satisfying, why did this person every night go out and drink? His wife was becoming frustrated with him. And ultimately, 55 years old, he had a heart attack. It's practical. We see it every day. But there's no positive alternative. You're not going to get it in your university. They're not going to tell you about the facts of life, the reality of life. You're only going to get that from devotees. That's right. As hard as it may sound, that's the facts of life. The only thing you're going to get in the material world is sense gratification. There's no other alternative. If you want another alternative, you have to come to the spiritual world.
What about people who live in rural areas who are just happy living a simple life, eating their meals, and these problems that we talk about seem...
Do you know anybody like that? Do you know anybody like that?
They, at least
No, do you know anybody like that?
Not particularly.
No. You go in the rural areas, and they drink just as much as they do in the city nowadays. They're just as frustrated. Because they've gotten away from, well, there's a whole thing, but they've gotten away from cow protection. They used to protect the cow. Now they slaughter the cow. They used to grow things that they needed. Now they grow things they don't need. Right? There used to be subsistent farming in this country. Now it's all cash. And they fail. They borrow money at high rates of interest. Their tobacco crop fails, and they hang themselves. The whole thing has become distorted. Yes, they could be living in the country, growing what they need, use everything that they grow, and chant Hare Krishna. It used to be like that. People would work in the field at night, they'd come back and they hear Mahabharata every night. They hear Ramayana every night. They were fixed in spiritual consciousness. Right? But it's not like that anymore. They go back and turn on the TV. And previously, there were no TVs in the villages. There was no internet in the villages. Now it's everywhere. It's all pervading. 24-hour sense gratification. Glued to the phone. It's the nature of the age. Kali Yuga. It's very contaminating. It's a whole gamut of circumstances that frustrate people. But Bhagavad Gita is the answer. It's right there. It's right under their nose. Somebody just needs to point out to them, stop growing tobacco. Grow what you need. Only grow what you need. And use everything that you grow. Again, they can become happy by living in the village. We want to also promote that kind of life. It's one of our projects. Simple living and high thinking. It's important. Okay, any other questions? I think we ran over time. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for listening, and we invite you to come back again and again to Hare Krishna land. And this is Krishna's home. We're all part and parcel of Krishna, so it's your home too. Hare Krishna.